Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Liam Douglas here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Fujifilm X100VI. Yes, I managed to finally get my hands on one to review, but before we get into all of that, let's go ahead and roll the intro. Okay, so in March of 2024, just a couple of months ago, Fujifilm officially announced the X100VI to replace the X100V, or 5, however you want to call it. But what are the key differences between these two cameras? Well, we're going to go ahead and get into that today. Now, if you did not already know, the Fujifilm X100 line started back in 2011 with the original FinePix X100. Fuji later decided to move it out of the FinePix family of cameras and into the X series, which is where it is today. Now, all of the X100 bodies, and there have been a total of 6 now with the release of the X100VI, all of these cameras have a 23mm f2 fixed lens. So they are a fixed lens point and shoot camera. Now, the 23mm f2 lens is equivalent to 35mm f2 in the full frame field of view. Now, with this lens, you have the perfect camera to do street photography. If you've been following this channel for any amount of time or listening to my podcast, you know that in my opinion and the opinion of many other photographers out there, 35mm focal length is the perfect focal length. It's the king of focal lengths, especially for street and travel photography. Now, there are other companies that make compact high-end point and shoot cameras. Ricoh does with the GR3 line, and Leica does as well. But all of those other cameras either use a 28mm fixed lens or a 40mm fixed lens. Some people do like having the option of 28mm to go a little wider. Some people like 40mm to go a little tighter with their street photography. Me, I prefer to stick with the 35mm. Now, with my X100V, I do have the 2 teleconversion lenses that go on the front of this lens that'll convert it to 28mm or 50mm should I choose to do so. And the nice thing is those conversion lenses will fit the 35mm full frame field of view lens on the X100VI as well. Now, the basic design of the X100 has pretty much always been the same. It hasn't changed a whole lot over the years. Now, the camera does have a fixed f2 lens that goes from f2 to f16. It does have a leaf shutter system, which means you can accomplish much higher sync speeds with your flashes, your speed lights or monolights, and it does have the built-in ND filters. So that all has stayed the same from the 5 to the 6. Not a whole lot of difference there. Now, the other thing that the 6 also has, like the previous models, is it does have the hybrid viewfinder where you can have an OVF or optical viewfinder, or you can use an EVF if you prefer an electronic viewfinder. I personally prefer to use the OVF at all times just because it's a nostalgia thing. It reminds me of the days when I shot 35mm film cameras. Now, both the X100V and 6 look pretty much the same. Here they both are side by side. You can see there isn't a whole lot of difference between them. There was a slight change in dimensions with the 6, but nothing that's super noteworthy. And all of the buttons, dials, and controls are in the exact same location. So if you're used to shooting with any of the X100 bodies, you'll be completely comfortable shooting with the X100VI should you decide to buy one. But what are the key differences between these two cameras? Well, the X100V has an X-Trans 4 26 megapixel or 26.1 megapixel CMOS sensor, and the X100V has the new 5th generation 40.2 megapixel X-Trans 5 sensor, CMOS sensor. So quite a bit more resolution in this one versus this one. And again, X processor 4, versus X processor 5 for the processor in the cameras, which the processor is what gives you your performance for autofocus and all of that good stuff. So basically this one has all of the same hardware technology as my X-T5, 40.2 megapixels, X-Trans 5 sensor, and X processor 5, and in-body image stabilization. So yes, the X100V does not have IBIS. This one does have IBIS built in. The X100V can shoot up to 4K video. The X100VI can shoot 6K video with a crop, so keep that in mind. Now the lowest ISO on the 5 is 160 and the lowest ISO on the 6 is 125, just like it is on my X-T5. Now those are, like I said, the key differences between the new cameras. With the X processor 5, the autofocus system is faster, more accurate, more sticky, if you will. So you are going to get better performance with the autofocus system versus the X100V, which has the older X processor 4. Don't get me wrong, the autofocus is really good in the X100V. It's just quite a bit better in the X100VI with that new X processor 5. Now, as far as the resolution goes, now many people that have been shooting with the X100 bodies, that's been their biggest gripe. They wanted more resolution, they wanted IBIS, and they wanted better video. Well, Fujifilm listened to them and gave them everything they wanted in the X100VI, 40 megapixel sensor, IBIS, and the better autofocus system with the X processor 5. So they checked off all the boxes. Now, the one box that did not get ticked off, and I don't know why people have been asking for this because I knew it was not going to happen, and that was changing out the battery. Both cameras are still using the NWP, I think it's called, 126S battery. So same battery between both cameras. Here's the battery from the 6, here's the battery from my 5, exactly the same. Now a lot of people are complaining about that. They wanted the 235 battery that's in the X-T5, and I knew that was not going to happen. I mean, think about it. This camera is super sleek and form factor camera. It's a nice little tiny camera, and in order to put the larger 235 battery, they would have had to increase the size of the camera significantly, and they were not going to do that. The whole idea is this is supposed to be a perfect travel / point and shoot camera. Now, Fujifilm, I believe it was Fujifilm, I'm not going to hold them accountable just in case the information I've gotten is wrong, but everybody has been reporting online that Fujifilm said that all of the accessories from the X100V will fit the X100VI, and that is true to an extent. What I mean by that is all of the lens accessories will fit. Other accessories like hand straps, neck straps, yada yada yada, all of that stuff will work. The one thing that is different between these two bodies is the 1/4-20 screw on the bottom. The one on the X100V is right there, dead center, and for some reason in the 6, and I've got a hand grip on here, they moved it closer to the front of the body. I have no idea why. I don't know if there was a specific reason for that. I wouldn't think it would have been because of IBIS, because the IBIS is internal and the 1/4-20 screw is on the bottom of the body and only goes into the cavity of the body by a few millimeters. So I wouldn't think that that would be why they relocated the 1/4-20 screw, but I could be wrong. I'm going to reach out to Fujifilm and see if I can find out. I'll ask my contact Daniel Carpenter, who was nice enough to send me the X100VI to review and do some videos on, and then of course I have to return it, which is a bummer, but it's totally understandable, and I appreciate him being so kind to hook me up with an X100VI this soon after they released. A lot of times they're all tied up by the really big YouTube channels, and it takes me a while to get stuff like this. But he was able to hook me up fairly quickly. I didn't even ask him until after we got back from our trip to New York because I didn't want to have to worry about that while we were up north. Now, in my opinion, This camera is a great camera, don't get me wrong. It's every bit as capable and even more capable than the X100V. I, however, will not be upgrading, and I'll explain why. The X100V, in my opinion, is a pretty much perfectly flawless camera. I am perfectly happy with the 26.1 megapixels. I don't need IBIS. The better autofocus sure would be nice, but it's not a deal breaker because I use this camera for street and travel photography, so the autofocus is plenty good enough for that. I would have been more impressed, and I've said this once or twice before, I would have been more impressed if they had put the 26.1 megapixel stacked sensor from the X-H2S into the X100VI. I personally think that would have made a lot more sense, and then I would have been more inclined to upgrade to the X100VI. That 26 megapixel stack sensor is going to give you much better low light performance and much faster readout speeds than this 40 megapixel standard X-Trans 5 processor is capable of. And I'm not saying that to bash the X100VI. Again, it is a fantastic camera. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this camera. It makes amazing images just like the X100V did. So I'm not bashing this camera. I'm just saying, for me personally, I would have rather seen the 26 megapixel stack sensor in this body if they could have done that, rather than the 40 megapixel sensor from my X-T5. If I want to shoot super high resolution, I'll just use my X-T5 or maybe even my GFX50R with the 45 millimeter 2.8 lens, which again is 35 millimeter full frame field of view. So if I wanted super high resolution street photography, I would use one of those bodies. But 99.9% of the time, I shoot all my street and travel photography with the X100V, and I will be sticking with the X100V. I absolutely love the camera. It is stellar. Like I said, it is near perfection as far as cameras go, and the X100VI just upped the game a bit more with the new processor, the higher resolution sensor, the IBIS, and all of those new capabilities that you get with this newer hardware. Now, the problem is the demand is still so great for the X100 cameras that Fujifilm has been completely overwhelmed with pre-orders. They made the camera available in March for pre-order. Rumor has it, and this hasn't been confirmed by Fujifilm and probably never will be, rumor is they have a pre-order queue of about 500,000 orders, 500,000 X100VIs. If that is true, with their new factory in China being able to produce 15,000 of these cameras per month, it's going to still take Fujifilm about 3 years to fill all of those orders if they definitely do have 500,000 orders. I would not be surprised if they do, just because of all the hype around the X100 cameras that started with the V and people going nuts for it on TikTok and Instagram and other social media platforms, but primarily TikTok. And the fervor is just as great for the X100VI, and that's why it's pretty much impossible to get. Now, the other big differences between the 5 and the 6 come down to the price point. The X100V was $1,399 or $1,400 brand new regular MSRP. The X100VI is $1,600 MSRP, $1,599 in the US. That's US dollars, not Canadian or European or anything else. And they do also offer limited editions of the X100VI that have the original old school Fuji logo on them from when the company was founded in 1934. They're only producing 1,934 of those limited edition cameras. They come with a special soft shutter release button, and they come with a specialized strap and some other stuff in the box as well. Now, what Fuji did, and I commend them for this, is instead of just putting the limited edition bodies up for sale, they decided to hold a lottery because they immediately got a bunch of bots that were ordering these cameras, the limited edition models, and they were scalpers. They were folks that were looking to pick up the limited edition model for $1,900 and then turn around and jack it up to like $4,000 or $5,000 on eBay. So Fuji did a great job at squashing all of that garbage, canceling all those orders, and they decided to make only so many cameras available to each continent. In the United States, we were allowed 300 of them, and I believe they've already all been raffled off, or lotteried off. They used a lottery system, so you could submit on a special link that they posted on Fuji's Instagram feed. You could go to that link, get in the pool for the lottery draw, and if you were contacted by email, you had, I think it was 48 hours to place your order and get your camera, or you would lose it and it would be sold to someone else that was already in the lottery pool. So I totally missed all that stuff. It would have been a little bit nice to have one of the limited edition anniversary models, just because it was commemorating the 90th year that Fujifilm has been in business, but I missed out on it. It's not the end of the world. I'm sure those limited edition cameras are going to be cherished by the people that are real photographers that bought them because they wanted the limited edition anniversary model of the X100VI. Now, in next week's video, I'm going to be doing street photography with the X100VI. I haven't decided where I'm going to yet. I don't want to do it in Uptown Roxborough because I've done a ton of street photography there. I've been to South Boston numerous times. So I may go to Danville, or I may go to Oxford or someplace like that. I haven't decided yet. I'd love to go to Charlotte, but it's like a 10-hour round trip drive, and that's just too far to want to drive to do street photography for a few hours. So I've got to figure out yet where I'm going to do my street photography with the X100VI, but I will be doing it. I'll take the 5 with me as well. I'll try to shoot identical photos of each item I photograph with both camera bodies, and then I'll have the stills in that video so you can see the differences for yourself. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see the differences in a YouTube video because everything gets compressed so much. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make the images available via a Dropbox link that I'll put in the description for the video, and you can go to the Dropbox link and view the still images for yourself in their full resolution glory. All right, that's going to wrap up this video. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, turn on all notifications, and I will see you in the next video.